Okay, so the way I'm going to do this is, so this is like a shortened version of what lab I'll do in the data viz class next semester. And so Illustrator is a little, the idea is that this is really how you make like these bespoke custom graphics. I say like if you can dream it, you can do it in Illustrator. It's really just like what your imagination can come up with and then what you can figure out how to do in the software. But it takes a long time to do these graphics. So instead of like building graphics live in front of you, which takes a long time, I'm just going to kind of show you some basics and then kind of show you what possibilities are instead of making you watch me like click pixels. Because I think that this lab is probably more like an hour or an hour and a half lab, but I'm going to try to get us through this in like a half hour because I know everybody's busy. And I think we'll do a second part on Thursday or maybe next week at some point. Um, and I think it might be useful maybe to have Audit do AI to HTML tutorial quickly one week too, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So this is first thing I wanted to show you guys is this is a Illustrator template that I have made for CNS, and this is just like a place you can start. The thing about Illustrator as opposed to working with something like Data Wrapper or Flourish or any of these other tools is like there's really just a million places to go. There's no template that you're starting with. So this is just a place you can start to work. This is actually like I didn't mean to save this as the template. Usually there's like just like a chart or graph in there, but this is something Angela and I were working on a couple semesters ago, and I was just showing her like this would be like a like a picture chart where you would just have like a bunch of icons of people and you're like highlighting some of them, and this is something I threw together in like 5 minutes just to show Angela like something that she could do, and I think she did do something like this. But the idea with this template, we had one of these at the Sun, so I just recreated it for CNS. So this is like your canvas, but like all around here are just different pieces you can grab to start with. Like here would be a pie chart or like a map of the US that's broken up by states, or a line chart or a column chart or a map of Maryland or an area chart. And here are like a bunch of colors you could just grab. Here are some text styles you could just grab. So basically like you could be working in this template and grabbing colors and text and different pieces and sampling them, and what you would have in the end would like match our styles, basically is the idea. So this is available. It's on GitHub. And I'll work in this just for this presentation. Um, I wanted to show like a couple quick things. First, I wanted to show this graphic that Molly did. And I think, Molly, you actually did this in XD, right? But, the idea is the same. Whatever design software you're comfortable in is totally fine. I use Illustrator because you can do a lot more, but XD is a much simpler program. So if all you're trying to do is make dots and put text in, XD is totally fine. Molly, do you want to talk about this graphic a little bit? What it shows and how you made it?
Yeah, so we were showing when people complained about COVID to OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, basically not a lot happens. So the green dots are, actually I can't see as well, but I think it's like those are all the total complaints. And then the next, the like teal are complaints that resulted in inspections, and by law, every complaint is supposed to result in an inspection. So this should have been a square, right? Not a funnel. And then the last one is all the inspections that resulted in citations. So basically, it went really badly during COVID. And yeah, I did this in XD. I had to do some math to like calculate the dots, so I wasn't literally counting all of them. That was the hardest part, but the rest was just kind of organizing them.
So yeah, I mean, this is, you have an idea about how you could visualize some data, and there isn't like a template out there that works, so you just do it yourself in one of these software programs. I used to work in Photoshop a lot. I think Illustrator or XD would probably be the easiest ones to work in, but whatever you're sort of comfortable in is fine. You'll see a lot of like what people kind of call data art stuff out there. I'll show you a couple examples from Ali Torbin, does this practitioner, data viz practitioner, and does some like data art type stuff. And all this stuff is done in Illustrator. And I think it was Ali who I heard say that like her, data art kind of, Jenna, how did Derek describe data art, you said in his class? Do you remember? it's kind of like, the idea behind data art is not like necessarily to communicate hard numbers. It's just to kind of like get the, yeah, more abstract. It's to kind of like get the feeling of the numbers out there. Um, but I think it was Allie who said that her workflow is actually to like visualize data in this program called raw graphics, and then she brings it into Illustrator and just totally blows it apart to make these cool graphics. And that's what we're going to show in the next tutorial, maybe on Thursday or next week. I'll show you guys. That's how I made that mushroom graphic that you guys like to tease me about. So we'll recreate that mushroom graphic, but you make it, you sort of have your chart mathematically made in a program like raw graphics, or we'll do one in Flourish today, and then you bring it over into Illustrator and you can do whatever you want with it at that point. Probably my favorite data viz designer is this woman named, does it have her name here? It's an Italian name, so I have a hard time pronouncing it. This doesn't really matter, but anyway, she did this one, The Shape of Dreams, and she does a lot of great work. I'll send around her portfolio later. It's like Frederica something. But she does these really, really complex data visualizations that you generally have to like read her legends. It takes a while to sort of get into. This is all about dreams, and we won't spend a lot of time on it, but I'll send this around later if you guys want to look at it. It's just gorgeous. But it's basically the same idea. Like she has these ideas about ways to visualize data, and then she draws the stuff herself and then makes the visualizations like in Illustrator. I assume that's her workflow. So anyway, let's take a look at, there's a couple ways to make charts and graphs in Illustrator. I'm just going to get rid of all. So what I'm not going to do is go over like how to use the Illustrator tools. I sent that tutorial about that the other day. If you guys want to, actually want to keep that little line in the middle, that guide. If you guys need to learn about how to use tools in Illustrator, that 45-minute, that video I sent that's like 45-minute guide to basic tools in Illustrator, I think is a great way to do it. So there's a charting tool in Illustrator, and I'll show you guys how to use that first. It kind of is not great, right? I think that they haven't updated the Illustrator charting tool in 11 years. I think the entire time I've been making infographics professionally, the charting tool has been exactly the same, which is not really what you want and not what you expect from Adobe. So I just don't think it's supported very well, but it's okay. So this is this column graph tool. Is this what you use, Ada, when you make charts and graphs in Illustrator?
I use Flourish
and then okay, that's the next workflow we're going to do. I actually think that's better. This is what I used to do with the Sun. This is how I was taught. It's a little hinky, like you just draw this square and it brings up a spreadsheet, so it's just like every other way that you make graphics, but it's just super hinky. So the first thing we'll do is we'll look at like, we will make a bar chart with Illustrator looking at 2013 to 2020. So this is like, the reason that we're using these numbers will become obvious a little bit later, but these are all about like chocolate revenue. So this shows like revenue change in percents for like the chocolate industry in the United States between 2013 and like it's projected to 2025. So we'll just copy this and we'll paste it into Illustrator. And man, this is like so hinky. So the way that this spreadsheet is going to interpret, it's going to chart out your dates if you don't put quotes around them. And it's really, really difficult to use this like little thing here. It's so hinky. I spent so many frustrating hours in the newsroom learning how to use this tool. And let's just do to 2021 so you guys don't have to watch me like put these quotes around everything. All right, so usually I'll just retype stuff. 2015, I screwed that up. So if we didn't put these quotes around it, it would basically try to chart these numbers and think that they were like numeric values that we wanted to chart in some way. Okay, so now we'll just click the check button and it's going to make like a little chart for us. And there are ways we can change this. We can right click on it and there's like a type, data, and design. The data is what we were just in. There's also like a type one where we can choose different kinds of graphics it will try to make for us. You can do pie charts, and there's some different options. There's graph options, value options, category options. So you can change a lot of stuff here. But the real advantage of this is like, okay, so now we can start use these select tools, and we can just start selecting things, and we can make this look like however we want, right? We can change the font for every one of these values. See if I can bring my window in here a little bit better. If I pull down my, let's see, type, character window, right, I can make these whatever font I want. Right, I could also just use like my little tool here, and I could sample some type from over here, and then probably want to bring these things over, and I could change the colors, and everything's like highly customizable. What I generally will do is like I'll start selecting like these tiny little guys here, and I'll just like hide them. Maybe I don't want all those ticks. I usually will hide my 0 value, though of course this goes into negative, so actually I do want to keep my 0. Yeah, so you can sort of change this however you want just by selecting these little aspects, etc. But like I said, it's a little bit hinky, so I don't tend to use that graph option all that much, but it is a fine way to do things. More likely, I would use Flourish to make like to make this type of graph. Like here's one that I made with that exact same data. It just goes to 2020. And what this is sort of like the point I think of this graph, like if we were going to kind of analyze it, it's like what during the pandemic people were stuck at home and they ate a lot of chocolate, right? Okay, so maybe that's what our story is about. But anyway, so we can, so you guys all know how to use Flourish. I made this chart, I customized it. I kind of think customizing it in Flourish as much as you can is probably a good idea. And then you can export it. And what you can export it when you download image, you want to select SVG, which is scalable vector graphics. So Illustrator is a program that works in vectors. Common vector formats are .ai, which is .adobe Illustrator, .eps, which is encapsulated PostScript, and .svg, which is scalable vector graphic. SVG is also like a web safe format that can actually output into code, and you can display it in a web page. But those are the three you're going to generally look for. SVG is probably the most common these days. And the deal with these vector formats is that you can edit absolutely everything about them in Illustrator. A vector is made of lines, or a vector is a line, so vector graphics are made of lines. In Photoshop and XD, you're working in pixels, which are made of dots, right? So they don't scale as well. So that's what the real advantage of Illustrator. So anyway, I'll download that, I'll save it, and now I'll find that SVG, and I'll open that in Illustrator. I'll just say, just ignore that, that's fine. Okay, so there we go. So now we've got this thing that we can totally edit as much as we want. And it will come in a bunch of, they're not exactly layers, because Illustrator does use layers, but that's not exactly how they're like objects, basically. And the way that things often will come in, and it's the same way with that chart we were looking at a minute ago, is things are all grouped together. So we can get at all of these elements a couple different ways. So here we have these two selection tools, the selection tool and then the direct selection tool. So if we use direct selection, it's going to let us like drill down a little bit and just select one item. But often it's a good idea to just like select your whole graphic and then just start going up to object, ungroup. I'll usually do this like 5 times. And it just like ungroups sort of everything. And now you can use the direct selection tool and like, okay, that's probably just like something white in the background. I'm just going to delete that. I don't need it. Okay, that deleted my whole graph. That's probably not what I want to do. Right, so basically it's just a matter of sort of getting at what you want. And you can start, like I would, for instance, probably reduce the number of, I can do whatever I want, right? Maybe I want to show 1, 5, 10, whatever, and I want to delete some of these lines. Maybe I want to delete all of those lines. I don't need them. I just start selecting them and like deleting them. It's just a matter of, you can really customize these like a lot further. I could start selecting these bars, and maybe maybe I like really want to highlight that 2020 bar, so I can change the color of that. Maybe I want to change the font for all of these things, and I just sort of like select it and change it up. Um, Another thing that you can do is start bringing in other graphics just to sort of visualize things in a more interesting manner. Like, let's take a look at, um, so I've got, oh, here we go. Here's like an image um, that I found just on one of those free um, image sites. So I can go to File, Place. I'll go find that. All right, so this is basically like an image of like some cellophane, might be like a background of candy, something like that. I can bring it in. It's absolutely humongous, so I need to really shrink it. All right. It's absolutely humongous. There we go. That's what I want. You just did the same thing. So maybe I can just scale that item. Yeah, let's make it like 20%. Keeps bringing, there we go. Okay, so now I've got this. Maybe I want to make that the background, and then I could bring in my, maybe I want to make all these bars brown and change some things about the text, bless you.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I could kind of get something that's what I'm looking for here. And, in the data viz class, I'll like actually do this in front of the class, but I think all you guys can kind of see how I got there, right? Like I added some headline and a chatter up at the top. I made the bars brown. Like I really think that like it's the details that make these things more interesting here, right? Like, so if we look at the difference between them, like we've got the values down here like diagonal. There's no highlight. Like in the final one, like I brought, and I'm literally like what I would probably do is I would just grab all these at the bottom and just delete them. And then I would just retype the values right here using the text tool 2013 or whatever, and then, get it exactly how I wanted it. And then I would just, here we go. And I just copy that to the next one and the next one and change it and etc. So it's pretty time consuming to make these custom graphics, right? But in the end, you can make something that's contextual and pretty cool, right? So the different things that I've done are add the values for the specific bars up at the top, just customize it a little bit, bring in that background, and it's just like it just gets the idea across a little bit more. I'd like to take this a little bit further, and I want to buy like a Kit Kat bar and take a picture of it on a white background and replace the bars with like Kit Kats. I tried to do it with like a Snickers bar that I found online, and it looked terrible, so I just haven't quite gotten to that yet. But there's like, I stole all this idea from this Wall Street Journal graphic that is really well done, right? And you can see like you can see how this was all done in Illustrator, right? It's not a huge leap from what we just did to this. This took somebody all day long to do, maybe longer. I guarantee you they went to the vending machine and bought a Kit Kat and took that picture. so that they could customize it. I mean, it's got some really nice little details where it's got like the crumbs from the Kit Kat like on the background. This is a much better cellophane wrapper than I was using, and like then they just brought in these other contextual graphics and just made them brown, and you kind of get the idea, you know. So this is just a really nice sort of package that was done in Illustrator, and I assume and sort of gets that idea across. Um, Another one that I have been working on is like this one that shows like it replaces the bars with pencils, and this is super easy to do. So I just started in in Flourish, making the bar chart. I'm not sure if I have the yeah, I don't think I have any of the ones that came before it, but basically like, so I've got the data here, college enrollment, right? I just made the chart in Flourish. Let's see if we can find that. It's probably this one. No. I guess it doesn't matter, but you guys get the idea. I would have made that bar chart in Illustrator, sorry, in Flourish, and brought it in here. And then I've got a pencil image, right? And I actually I found the pencil somewhere free, and it had a little bit of a background. So I opened it in Photoshop, and I basically just like trimmed it a little bit. So it's got a transparent background, and I just cropped it like really tight around the pencil, saved that as a PNG, and then I just like placed that pencil image here in Illustrator. And because it's a pencil and there's not like a huge difference between the bars, and I think it's the same way with the Kit Kat, I was basically able to just like transform the size of the pencils with the bars without it really like uh, making things look weird. Which, like if you tried to do this with a person and you scaled them that way, they'd look insane. So there's little tricks you could use. Or really, I would say there's certain images that this will work with and some not. Right, but this has like a lot more flavor than just like a regular bar chart, right? Not only is it using the pencils for the bars, but it also has this nice annotation that shows like, where there was a low point in college enrollments, and just looks nice. Um, and like we saw with the Ali Torben stuff and the dreams, you can take this so much further, right? And if you think about it, you can really do almost anything with these graphics. One thing that I've been talking to Julia and Molly about is sort of taking maps and taking them into Illustrator and then annotating them, and that's something that you'll see like professional newsrooms do a lot with. Just sort of quick news graphics. So if I can find what I'm looking for here quickly, we will look at, here we go. So here's one, and this isn't nearly as good as like other ones you will see places, but like I did this analysis of robberies in Baltimore, and basically like made this map in Carto, and then like zoomed in on certain parts of the map, brought it into Illustrator, and then just started like annotating it. Like I wanted to show where certain carjackings were, so I just like highlighted the street and put these little bubbles highlighting certain points, and was able to tell like more of a customized story than what Carto would allow me to do. And you see a lot of people doing this in news design where they'll use, for instance, like Google Earth or Google Maps, but Google Earth is a great product because it has really high quality maps. So let's say that like, for instance, the explosion in Beirut that day a couple years ago, right? Like now, a week or two down the line, like all the major news organizations published like beautifully detailed animated maps about what happened in Beirut that day. But you need to put out a map like the second that happens, right? So what can you do? You go to Google Earth, you zoom in on the port of Beirut, you screenshot it, you pull it into Illustrator, and then you start annotating it, right? And so that's like the kind of thing you can do really, really quickly with custom maps. And there's all kinds of free maps out there on Google Earth and satellite imagery and all kinds of stuff. So you don't necessarily need to be a cartographer to create the base map. You just need to find the base map, screenshot it, bring it into Illustrator, and then start annotating it to tell your story. So there's literally just like endless ways you can use Illustrator to do all this stuff. And I will show you the raw graphics to Illustrator workflow next time, and I'll actually do a little bit more clicking then. Um, and yeah, so one thing that I don't generally do, but I think is a really good idea, and you'll see professional newsrooms do it more and more often, is creating graphics in Illustrator and then exporting them to HTML so that they can be hosted on websites in a way that can be responsive and is picked up by Google and isn't just like a static image. Audit, do you want to just talk about that just a little bit? I think that we should schedule a time in the next week or so where you actually demo it for people. But do you just want to tell people what that is and what it does real quick?
Yeah, of course. So AI to HTML is a tool developed by the New York Times. It allows you to like send in an Illustrator file and get HTML output for that file. And the really, really, really powerful thing about AI to HTML is you can like have responsive graphics that are created in Illustrator that live on the internet. So the way you would do that is within Illustrator, you would have multiple artboards sized for different devices. So like one artboard for desktop, one for tablet, and one for mobile maybe. And when you output that script as HTML, the web page will know when to take like the desktop version of it, when to take the mobile version, when to take the tablet version. And the second really powerful thing about AI to HTML is it outputs text as p tags within the HTML page. So when you're on like the New York Times and you search for Baltimore, Maryland, your search results will also include like your annotations made on the map and not just like the text part of the HTML page, which is really cool.
That's great. I assume, I don't know if anybody actually does this or not, but I assume you could design something in Illustrator, output it with AI to HTML, and then start writing JavaScript to make like a graphic, to start targeting specific pieces of that and make it interactive in some way.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah. Anyway, well, that's what I got for you guys. I know that was kind of like a whirlwind. If you take data viz, I have all kinds of exercises, and I'll walk through this a lot more slowly. But I think you guys are all really sharp with this stuff. I thought if I just showed you what was possible, you guys could dive in and start playing around, and hopefully that'll just increase your capabilities here in the class. So, any questions or anything? Molly.
I have a question. So this summer, I think like your idea with like taking a photo of the Kit Kat bar, I was trying to do that with like newspaper images and stuff. Do you normally like literally take a photo, or do you find it's easier to find things online?
If you can find things online, that's generally easier. But I was really struggling trying to find the Kit Kat bar that was like framed exactly like I needed it to be straight up and down and transparent. And I tried to find it online and couldn't. And then I realized, hell, this is a Kit Kat bar. Why don't I just buy it and take a picture of it? So I think either can work. It's probably like if you have something. My experience is that like it's difficult to find that exact thing that you want, but I think either one is definitely. These pencils are perfect, and I found them online. So
maybe this is like a Photoshop thing, but like for example, I took pictures of the newspaper at my house this summer, but like then I didn't have a transparent background.
Right.
Like, can you make it a transparent background, or?
That's what I did. So I had the pencil image. And then I opened it in Photoshop and I got rid of the background and saved it as a transparent PNG and then brought that transparent PNG into Illustrator. So there's that additional step of opening the photo up in Photoshop to get rid of the background first. And then, sometimes, this is something I always tell people in 352, it's like sometimes you actually have to design your piece or your graphic around whatever art you're using. Like for instance, this pencil could have a white background and it would still work in this situation. You know what I mean? Because this is on a white thing. But yeah, probably the best thing is to make it transparent yourself in Photoshop. Okay, thank you guys.